The neon lights of Zeus cast their electric hues across the bustling marketplace, reflecting off the gleaming towers that pierced the violet evening sky. Elias Frost pulled his worn dark gray jacket tighter around his shoulders, weaving through the dense crowd of alien species that filled the marketplace. The crown jewel of the Centauri Empire pulsed with life around him, but all he could focus on were the measly 30 credits in his pocket. "Not enough for a decent meal, let alone a way out of this hellhole," he muttered, brushing his chestnut blonde hair out of his light blue eyes. As a human cargo skiff pilot, Elias had grown accustomed to scraping by on the galactic fringes. Hauling fertilizer and bootleg whiskey kept him alive, but just barely. What he needed was one decent score, something to finally break free from the constant struggle of hand-to-mouth existence. The marketplace around him was a cacophony of smells and sounds. Sizzling alien street food, merchants hawking their wares, the low hum of hover vehicles passing overhead. Towering alien architecture loomed above it all, a constant reminder of the Centauri's technological superiority and their rigid social hierarchy. In the Centauri Empire, the caste system was absolute. The nobility resided at the apex, living in luxury that most species could only dream of. Humans, relatively new to the galactic stage according to official records, were regarded as beneath all caste, disposable labor, barely worth acknowledgement. Elias had heard all the slurs before. Primitive, underdeveloped, barely sentient. He'd learned to tune them out, focusing instead on survival. A commotion erupted ahead, the crowd parting like a wave. Elias craned his neck to see what was happening. A sleek, black limousine hovered a few feet off the ground, its polished exterior reflecting the surrounding neon. Two green-skinned Centauri guards flanked the vehicle, urging pedestrians to clear a path. "Make way for the noble house of Valine," one guard shouted, his voice amplified by some unseen technology. Elias instinctively stepped back, but the sudden surge of the crowd pushed him forward. Before he could regain his balance, he stumbled directly into the path of the approaching limousine. The vehicle jerked to a halt, inches from him. The door slid open with a pneumatic hiss, and Elias found himself staring into the fiery orange eyes of a female Centauri aristocrat. Her skin was a deep orange, almost luminescent in the market's artificial light. A black bodysuit adorned with intricate silver patterns hugged her slender frame. Her expression shifted from surprise to disgust as she registered Elias's species. "A creature of your caste should not be near me," she said, her voice melodic despite the venom in her words. "How dare you approach my vehicle?" Elias straightened his posture, meeting her gaze despite knowing the trouble it could bring. "That's a new one," he replied with a dry smile. "Usually I get a name before rejection." The Centauri woman's eyes widened at his audacity. Before she could respond, one of her green-skinned bodyguards stepped between them, shoving Elias roughly backward. "Know your place, human filth," the chauffeur growled. "You address Lady Sunrai of House Valen, daughter of High Counselor Valen himself. Your eyes should be on the ground." Elias stumbled, but kept his balance. "My apologies for the collision," he said, not sounding apologetic at all. "Your hovercraft's pathfinding seems as rigid as your caste system." The chauffeur raised a hand to strike him, but Lady Sunri intervened. "Don't waste your energy, Krav. The human's ignorance is punishment enough," she waved dismissively. "Continue to the embassy. We're already late." As the limousine began to move away, Elias noticed something small and octagonal fall from a concealed pocket in Sunri's bodysuit. It landed silently on the ground, its metallic surface catching the neon light. Without thinking, he scooped it up. The object was warm to the touch, pulsing with a faint blue glow. Strange engravings covered its surface, shifting slightly under his fingertips as if alive. He looked up to see Sunri staring back at him through the limousine's rear window. Her orange face drained of color as she spotted the object in his hand. Their eyes locked for a moment before the vehicle disappeared into the crowded market. Elias slipped the strange artifact into his pocket, unaware that three cloaked figures had witnessed the exchange from the shadows. Their eyes, hidden beneath dark hoods, tracked his movement through the crowd. "The human has the keystone," one whispered into a communication device. "Lord Krell will be pleased." Elias sensed danger before he saw it. A prickling sensation at the back of his neck, the kind that had kept him alive during years of smuggling runs through disputed territories. He glanced behind him and caught a glimpse of the three hooded figures pushing through the crowd in his direction. Without hesitation, he bolted, diving into the labyrinthine network of food stalls and vendor carts that made up the lower market district. The octagonal device pulsed warmly against his thigh as he ran, almost as if guiding him. He darted through a narrow alley, knocking over stacked crates to slow his pursuers. The smell of spiced meat and fermented beverages filled his nostrils as he pushed past a group of four-armed aliens haggling over the price of exotic fruits. "Sorry about that," he called back as tentacled appendages grasped at him in annoyance. A quick glance over his shoulder confirmed his fears. The cloaked figures were still in pursuit, moving with unnatural speed and coordination. Not ordinary thieves. Then, something else. Something worse. Elias ducked into a dimly lit tavern, pushing through the packed room of various alien species, drowning their sorrows in intoxicants. He exited through the kitchen, ignoring the chef's angry protests, and found himself in a quieter back alley. Breathing heavily, he pressed his back against the cool metal wall and pulled out the octagonal device. In the relative darkness, its blue glow was more pronounced, the strange engraving shifting and pulsing with an inner light. "What are you?" he whispered, turning it over in his hands. "The better question," came a gravelly voice from the shadows, "is what do you intend to do with it?" Elias whipped around, instinctively reaching for the small blade he kept concealed in his boot. An elderly Zenturi emerged from the darkness, his green skin weathered and wrinkled with age. He leaned heavily on a walking staff adorned with similar engravings to those on the octagonal device. "I don't want trouble," Elias said, keeping the blade ready. The old Zenturi chuckled. "Yet, trouble has found you nonetheless." He gestured to the object in Elias's hand. "That keystone belongs to the past, a past some would prefer to keep buried." "Keystone," Elias echoed, glancing down at the device. "I am Toran," the old Zenturi said, ignoring Elias's question. "And those pursuing you are Vexari, hunters who serve interests that threaten us both." He gestured urgently down the alley. "Come. My safe house is nearby. I can offer protection, and perhaps answers." Elias hesitated, weighing his options. The keystone pulsed more insistently in his palm, as if urging him to follow the old man. "Fine," he decided. "Lead the way, Toran. But any funny business, and we'll see how well Zenturi blood clots." Toran smiled grimly. "Your distrust is prudent, human, but unnecessary. Our fates are now intertwined, whether we wish it or not." They moved swiftly through the lower districts, keeping to the shadows. Toran, despite his apparent age, navigated the maze-like alleys with practiced ease. After several minutes of silent travel, they arrived at what appeared to be an abandoned storage facility. Toran placed his hand on a weathered panel beside the entrance. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a surprisingly spacious interior filled with ancient-looking artifacts, holographic displays, and stacks of physical books, a rarity in the digital age. "Welcome to my humble sanctuary," Toran said, securing the door behind them. "One of the few places in Gios where the true history of our worlds is preserved." "What do you mean, true history?" Elias asked. His curiosity piqued despite his wariness. Toran gestured to the keystone in Elias's hand. "That relic is one of 7, created during the Dawn Era, over 5,000 years ago. A time when humans and Centauri lived in harmony, as equals. Elias scoffed. Right, and I'm actually the Emperor of Earth in disguise. Your skepticism is understandable, Toran replied, moving to a holographic display. The official Centauri doctrine states that humans were discovered merely 3 centuries ago, primitive beings from a backwater planet. But that is a lie perpetuated by those who seized power after the Great Sundering. He activated the display, showing ancient murals depicting humans and Centauri working side by side, building magnificent structures, even appearing to intermarry. These images are from the Temple of First Light, hidden beneath the foundations of Zeus. Toran explained. They tell the true story, that humans and Centauri once shared a profound bond, one sealed through a sacred ritual known as the Rite of First Night. Before Elias could respond, a deep rumbling shook the building. Dust fell from the ceiling as a second, more violent tremor followed. They've found us, Toran said grimly, grabbing a small bag and stuffing it with scrolls and data crystals. The Vexari must want the keystone badly to use sonic drills in the city. A third tremor, stronger than the previous ones, sent cracks spreading across the ceiling. Toran handed the bag to Elias. Take these. They contain the truth about the keystones and the Vault of Ascension. He pointed to a concealed door at the back of the room. That passage leads to the ancient temple beneath the city. You must go. Now. What about you? Elias asked, surprised by his own concern for the old Centauri. Toran smiled sadly. My role in this tale ends here. But yours. Yours is just beginning. Elias Frost. He pressed a weathered hand to Elias's chest, just above his heart. You are an echo of what once was, what could be again. The wall beside them exploded inward, showering them with debris. 3 cloaked figures stood in the newly created opening, their hoods now pulled back to reveal pale, almost translucent skin stretched over angular features. Their eyes were solid black, devoid of pupils or irises. Vexari, Toran hissed, pushing Elias toward the concealed door. Go! Not without you, Elias insisted, drawing his blade. Foolish sentiment, Toran replied, but there was warmth in his voice. Perhaps that is why your kind were chosen. He pulled a small energy weapon from his robes. I will buy you time. The future depends on that keystone reaching the temple altar. Elias hesitated for only a moment before nodding. He slipped through the concealed door as Toran opened fire on the Vexari. The last thing Elias saw before the door sealed behind him was the old Centauri standing defiant, surrounded by a nimbus of blue energy as the Vexari advanced. The passage beyond was narrow and dark, illuminated only by the pulsing blue light of the keystone. The walls were ancient, carved with the same shifting symbols that adorned the relic in his hand. Elias could feel the structure trembling around him as the battle raged above. He moved quickly, following the downward slope of the passage. The air grew cooler and damper with each step, the weight of the city pressing down from above. After what felt like hours, but was likely only minutes, the passage opened into a vast circular chamber. The chamber's walls were made of a marble-like substance, etched with murals depicting scenes similar to those Toran had shown him. Humans and Centauri, standing together beneath twin moons, building ships that sailed between stars, sharing knowledge and bonds that transcended species. At the center of the chamber stood a circular pedestal with an octagonal depression, a perfect fit for the keystone. The blue glow from the relic intensified as Elias approached the pedestal, becoming almost blinding. With a sense of inevitability, he placed the keystone into the depression. It settled with a satisfying click, and the entire chamber came alive with blue light. The murals on the walls began to move, telling their ancient story in a fluid, living tableau. A voice that was not quite sound but more like thought filled Elias's mind. The covenant is remembered. The echo awakens. Visions flooded his consciousness, memories that were not his own. He saw the first contact between humans and Zenturi, not as conqueror and conquered, but as equals discovering each other among the stars. He witnessed the formation of a bond, sealed through a ritual joining of chosen representatives from each species, the rite of first night. He felt the devastating pain of betrayal when a splinter faction, ancestors of today's Vexari, sabotaged the alliance, manipulating genetic markers to make themselves appear as a separate, superior species. He experienced the systematic erasure of true history, the relegation of humans to beneath caste status, the suppression of all evidence of their former equality. As the visions receded, Elias found himself on his knees before the pedestal, tears streaming down his face. The keystone continued to pulse with blue light. But now, it projected a holographic map of Zeus above it, with a pulsing marker indicating a location across the city. With the map came a strange sensation, a psychic pull towards someone specific, someone he had met only briefly, but now felt connected to in ways he couldn't explain. Sunri, he whispered, the name coming unbidden to his lips. The chamber shuddered as distant explosions echoed through the ancient structure. The Vexari were getting closer. Elias wiped his tears, reclaimed the keystone from the pedestal, and followed a new passage that had opened in the chamber wall. This corridor was different, constructed of more modern materials, though still clearly ancient by current standards. It sloped upward, leading him toward the surface. After several twists and turns, he emerged into what appeared to be an abandoned spaceport. Massive stone pillars supported a vaulted ceiling hundreds of feet above. The floor was inlaid with luminescent minerals that glowed softly in the darkness. Ancient ships of organic design sat silent in their docking cradles, untouched for millennia. And standing in the center of it all, bathed in the light of a solitary beam that had somehow found its way through the layers of city above, was Sunri. She had changed from her formal black bodysuit into more practical attire, a form-fitting jumpsuit of deep purple with silver reinforcements at the joints. Her fiery orange skin seemed to glow in the dim light of the ancient spaceport. Her eyes widened as she spotted Elias emerging from the corridor, the keystone clutched in his hand. "You," she said, her voice a mix of surprise and something else. Recognition, perhaps. "I followed the activation signal. The keystone responded to you." Elias approached cautiously, the strange connection he had felt in the chamber growing stronger with each step. "Your little trinket has caused me quite a bit of trouble, Lady Sunri." She flinched at his use of her title. "I'm not here as a noble," she said, glancing nervously at the shadows around them. "I am here as a guardian of my people's true history." Before Elias could respond, a distant explosion echoed through the cavernous space. "Vexari interceptors," Sunri said grimly. "They're closing in." She extended her hand. "We need to leave. Now. I have a royal shuttle docked at a maintenance port nearby." "Why should I trust you?" Elias demanded, though the keystone pulsed warmly in his hand, as if encouraging him. "Because, like it or not, human, our fates are intertwined," she replied, echoing Toran's earlier words. "I know about the keystones, all 7 of them. My family has secretly preserved the knowledge for generations, waiting for the echoes to return." Another explosion, closer this time. "I can help you locate the remaining keystones," she continued urgently. "In exchange, I ask only that you protect the one you hold. It's responded to you in a way it never did to me." Elias hesitated, weighing his options. The visions from the temple still fresh in his mind. The strange connection he felt to this Zenturi woman he barely knew. The trust Toran had placed in him with his dying breath. "Fine," he decided, taking her extended hand. "Lead the way." They raced through the ancient spaceport, ducking under collapsed archways and leaping over fallen debris. Sunri moved with the grace and precision that came from years of physical training, not the soft luxury Elias had expected from a noble. They reached a modern access hatch that seemed out of place among the ancient architecture. Sunri placed her palm against a scanner, and the hatch slid open to reveal a sleek, royal-class shuttle. "You know how to fly?" she asked as they boarded. Elias grinned for the first time since their chaotic meeting. "Lady, flying is the only thing I'm actually good at." The shuttle's interior was opulent. Plush seating, crystal control interfaces, and a viewport made of a single piece of transparent material that would cost more than Elias had earned in his entire life. He settled into the pilot's seat, familiarizing himself with the controls. "We'll need to break atmosphere quickly," Sunri said, taking the co-pilot's position. "The Vexari will have planetary defense locked onto any ship leaving the royal docking protocols." Elias's hands danced across the crystal controls, bringing the engines to life with a soft purr. "Not if we use the maintenance tunnels to mask our exit." He glanced at her with a raised eyebrow. "That is, if you don't mind getting your royal shuttle a little dirty." Sunri's lips curved into a reluctant smile. "I'm beginning to understand why the Keystone chose you, human." "Name's Elias," he replied, guiding the shuttle into a narrow maintenance shaft that had clearly not been designed for a vessel of their size. "Elias Frost." "Very well, Elias Frost," she said, her formal tone softening slightly. "Let's hope your piloting skills are as impressive as your confidence." The shuttle accelerated through the maintenance tunnel, scraping against the walls occasionally as Elias pushed the craft to its limits. Behind them, the sound of pursuit grew louder, the high-pitched whine of Vexari interceptors. They burst from the tunnel into open air, Xios spreading out below them in a glittering tapestry of lights. Elias immediately banked hard, diving toward the lower districts to use the dense architecture as cover. "What are you doing?" Sunri demanded, gripping her seat as the shuttle narrowly missed a communications tower. "Making us harder to track," Elias replied, his focus entirely on the controls. "Royal shuttles stand out in traffic patterns. We need to be unpredictable." He weaved through the air lanes of Xios, ignoring the automated traffic systems that blared warnings through the shuttle's communications array. Above them, sleek black ships with predatory profiles dove in pursuit. Vexari interceptors. 5 of them. "We can't outrun them in atmosphere," Sunri said, checking the sensor readings. "Their ships are designed for pursuit." Elias nodded grimly. "Then we don't stay in atmosphere." He pulled back on the controls, angling the shuttle toward the stars. "Tell me there's a hyperdrive on this luxury yacht." "Short range only," Sunri confirmed. "Enough to reach the shattered belt, perhaps." "The asteroid field?" Elias raised an eyebrow. "Perfect." The shuttle broke atmosphere, leaving the glittering lights of Xios behind. The Vexari interceptors followed, gaining ground in the vacuum of space where their specialized engines had the advantage. "They're locking weapons," Sunri warned, her hands flying over the defensive systems. Elias juked the shuttle to port as energy weapons fire streaked past their starboard side. "How far to the shattered belt?" 3 minutes at maximum thrust, Sunri replied, diverting power to the engines. "We might not have 3 minutes," Elias muttered, as another barrage of weapons fire narrowly missed them. The keystone pulsed in his pocket, growing warmer, acting on instinct. Elias pulled it out and placed it on the console between them. Its blue glow intensified, and suddenly, the shuttle's control interfaces changed, ancient symbols overlaying the modern displays. "What's happening?" Sunri gasped. "I think it's trying to help," Elias said, feeling a new awareness of the ship's systems flooding his consciousness. His hands moved across the controls with newfound precision, guided by knowledge that wasn't his own. The shuttle surged forward with impossible speed, its engines outputting far beyond their design specifications. The Vexari interceptors fell behind, though they continued their pursuit. Ahead, the shattered belt came into view, a chaotic field of tumbling asteroids ranging in size from small boulders to small moons. Conventional wisdom deemed it suicide to navigate the belt at speed. But Elias felt the Keystone's guidance, showing him safe corridors that were invisible to normal sensors. "Hold on," he warned Sunri as they plunged into the asteroid field. The shuttle weaved through the tumbling rocks with impossible precision, banking and rolling in a dance that no normal pilot could have executed. Behind them, the Vexari ships attempted to follow, but lacked the Keystone's guidance. One interceptor clipped an asteroid and spun out of control, colliding with a second ship in a brilliant explosion. The remaining 3 ships fell further behind, struggling to navigate the treacherous field. "There," Sunri said suddenly, pointing to a massive asteroid ahead. "The outpost of the Forbidden Scholars is hidden within that one." Elias followed her direction, guiding the shuttle toward what appeared to be solid rock. As they approached, a seam appeared in the asteroid's surface, widening into a hidden docking bay. He eased the shuttle inside, and massive doors closed behind them, sealing out the dangers of the asteroid field. The docking bay was a blend of ancient and modern technology, similar to Turan's safe house but on a much larger scale. Zenturi in simple robes moved about, carrying data crystals and scrolls. They paused in their work as the royal shuttle powered down, gathering curiously around the vessel. Elias and Sunri disembarked, the keystone clutched in Elias's hand. An elderly Zenturi with pale green skin and eyes that had faded almost to white approached them, leaning on a staff similar to Turan's. "The echoes return," he said, his voice wavering with age and emotion. "Just as the prophecy foretold." Sunri bowed deeply. "Mentor Kellen, it is an honor to stand before you." The old Zenturi smiled gently. "The honor is mine, child of Valen." His gaze shifted to Elias. "And to you, human echo. The keystone has chosen well." Elias shifted uncomfortably, under the reverent stares of the gathered Zenturi. "Look, I appreciate the warm welcome, but we've got Vexari on our tail and a lot of questions that need answering." Kellen nodded. "Come, the inner sanctum will provide both safety and knowledge." He turned, gesturing for them to follow. The scholars parted to let them pass, many reaching out to touch the keystone as Elias walked by, as if drawing strength from its proximity. Kellen led them through corridors carved directly into the asteroid, illuminated by the same luminescent minerals Elias had seen in the ancient spaceport. They arrived at a set of massive doors inscribed with the now familiar shifting symbols. Kellen placed his hand on a central panel, and the doors slid open to reveal a circular chamber similar to the one beneath Zeus, but larger and better preserved. In the center stood 7 pedestals arranged in a circle around a central altar. Kellen guided them inside, and the doors sealed behind them. "What is this place?" Elias asked, the keystone pulsing more insistently in his hand. "The inner sanctum," Kellen replied, moving to one of the pedestals. "One of 7 scattered throughout the star systems. Here, the forbidden knowledge of the Dawn era is preserved." He reached into his robes and withdrew an octagonal device identical to the one Elias held. "And here, the second keystone has waited for the echoes to return." Sunri gasped. "You had one all this time?" Kellen nodded. "Each sanctuary guards a piece of the whole, but they can only be activated by the chosen, the echoes of the original bonded pair." "Echoes," Elias repeated. "Turan mentioned that too. What does it mean?" "In the Dawn era," Kellen explained, "a human and a Zenturi formed a bond through the rite of First Night ritual. Their union created a psychic resonance that has echoed through the generations, seeking suitable vessels to complete the cycle anew." He looked meaningfully between Elias and Sunri. "You are those vessels." Elias glanced at Sunri, who appeared equally uncomfortable with the implication. "So what? We're reincarnations or something?" "Not precisely," Kellen said. "More like compatible frequencies. Your minds, your spirits, resonate with the original pair. That is why the keystone responds to you, Elias Frost, and why Lady Sunrise was drawn to this place despite her family's complicity in the suppression of truth. Sunri flinched at his words. My father believes he is preserving order, she said defensively. The caste system is built on lies. Kellen interrupted gently. Lies that have caused suffering for centuries. A distant alarm began to sound, echoing through the asteroid. Kellen's expression grew grave. They have found us sooner than expected. He held out his keystone to Elias. Take this. You must complete the ritual before it is too late. What ritual? Elias demanded, even as he accepted the second keystone. The rite of first night, Kellen replied, moving toward the chamber doors. Place the keystones on the pedestals. The rest will follow. The doors slid open, and the sounds of combat filtered in, energy weapons fire and shouts of alarm. They come in force, Kellen said grimly. A Vexari warship and a High Council cruiser. He looked pointedly at Sunri. Your father has allied with them, it seems. Sunri's orange skin paled. No, he wouldn't. Go, Kellen urged, pushing them toward the central altar. Complete the ritual. It is our only hope. He slipped through the doors, which sealed behind him, leaving Elias and Sunri alone in the chamber. Well, Elias said after a moment of tense silence, I guess we'd better figure out this ritual thing. Sunri approached one of the pedestals, examining its surface. Each pedestal has an octagonal depression, like the one beneath Zeus. She looked at the two keystones in Elias's hands. But we only have 2 of the 7. Elias felt the keystones pulse in unison, growing warmer. Maybe we don't need all 7, he suggested, moving to stand beside her. Kellen seemed to think these 2 would be enough to start the process. The sounds of battle grew louder outside the chamber. Time was running out. Here goes nothing, Elias said, placing one keystone on the pedestal before him. Sunri took the second and placed it on the pedestal directly across the circle. Both keystones settled into their depressions with satisfying clicks, and blue light began to flow from them, forming lines of energy that connected across the central altar. The chamber hummed with power, the walls coming alive with moving images as they had in the temple beneath Zeus. Now what? Elias asked, looking around uncertainly. Sunri's eyes were fixed on the murals flowing across the walls. The rite of first night, she whispered. It was a bonding ceremony. She turned to face him, her expression a mix of realization and trepidation. A union between human and Zenturi. Understanding dawned on Elias. You mean? The chamber shuddered as something impacted the doors from outside. The blue energy lines connecting the keystones flickered. We're out of time, Sunri said urgently. She stepped forward, crossing to Elias's side of the altar. The ritual must be completed. Are you sure about this? Elias asked, suddenly aware of how close she stood, of the strange connection that had been building between them since the moment the keystone had fallen into his possession. Sunri's orange eyes met his blue ones. No, she admitted, but I trust the echoes within us. She reached up, placing her hands on either side of his face. Elias felt the keystone's energy flowing through him, resonating with something deep within his consciousness. The echo Kellen had spoken of. Their lips met, and the chamber exploded with blue light. 4 more keystones materialized on the remaining pedestals, completing the circle. The central altar rose from the floor, revealing a 7th depression that pulsed with anticipation. From the walls, the ceiling, the floor, streams of blue energy converged, forming a final keystone that settled into the central altar. The chamber doors burst open as the ritual reached its climax. Vexari warriors and High Council guards poured in, weapons raised. Behind them stood a pale, almost translucent figure with solid black eyes, Lord Krell of the Vexari Syndicate. and beside him, a regal Centauri in formal robes who bore a striking resemblance to Sunri. "Father," Sunri whispered, breaking the kiss but keeping her arms around Elias. High Counselor Valen's expression was a mixture of shock and outrage. "Sunri, what have you done?" Before anyone could react further, the completed circle of keystones unleashed a wave of psychic energy that enveloped the entire chamber. Every being present, Vexari, High Council guards, scholars who had slipped in behind them, was frozen in place as the unaltered history of human Zentri communion flooded their minds. The lies, the manipulation, the centuries of oppression, all were laid bare in an instant of pure truth. Most shocking of all was the transformation that overtook Lord Krell. The psychic wave seemed to strip away genetic alterations, revealing his true heritage, not a separate Vexari subspecies, but a Zenturi, like all the rest. His pale skin darkened to green, his solid black eyes developing irises and pupils. As the wave of energy receded, the beings in the chamber staggered, minds reeling from the forced enlightenment. The Vexari warriors looked at their own hands in confusion, seeing their true Zenturi nature for the first time in generations. High Counselor Valen approached the altar slowly, his gaze fixed on his daughter and the human she still embraced. "All this time," he said softly, "all the lies we were told, that we perpetuated." He looked at Elias with new eyes. The caste system, the suppression of human rights, all of it based on falsehoods. "Father," Sunri said, her voice steady despite the tension. "The keystones have shown us the truth. Humans and Zenturi were never meant to be divided by caste. The rite of first night was a celebration of our unity, not a reminder of conquest." Valen turned to the transformed Lord Krell, who stood silent in shock. "And your syndicate has manipulated our genetic history, posing as a separate species to maintain power." Krell found his voice at last. "We believed. We were told by our ancestors that it was necessary, that humans would destroy the Zenturi way of life, if given equality." Elias stepped forward, the keystone's energy still flowing through him, lending him confidence and clarity. "Your ancestors feared what they didn't understand, the power of unity, the strength that comes from diversity rather than rigid hierarchy." The scholars who had slipped into the chamber during the confrontation now moved among the Vexarian guards, speaking softly, explaining the truths revealed by the ritual. Mentor Kellen approached the central altar, his aged face serene despite the chaos. "The rite of first night has been remade," he announced. "The echoes have fulfilled their purpose. Now it falls to all of us to honor their sacrifice by building a new future, one that remembers our shared past." In the days that followed, the 7 keystones were brought before the High Council in Geos. The truth of human Zenturi history was revealed to the entire empire, sending shockwaves through the rigid caste system. Elias stood beside Sunri in the Grand Council chamber, the keystones arrayed before them on a ceremonial table. High Counselor Valen addressed the assembled representatives of every Zenturi house and human colony. "For centuries, we have lived a lie," he declared. "A lie that separated us from our human brethren, that relegated them to beneath caste status when they should have been our equals. Today, we begin to make amends." He gestured to Elias. "This human, Elias Frost, is formally recognized as the bonded partner of my daughter, Lady Sunri. Their union through the rite of first night ritual has restored the ancient covenant between our peoples." Murmurs rippled through the assembly, some of approval, others of uncertainty or dissent. Valen raised his hand for silence. "I propose the formation of a new governing body, the Communion Council, with equal representation from humans and Zenturi. Our caste system will be reformed, maintaining its organizational utility, but eliminating its oppressive elements." Sunri stepped forward. "The Vexari descendants will be rehabilitated into the true Zenturi population, Their genetic manipulations will be reversed over time, allowing them to reconnect with their heritage. "And what of the Keystones?" asked a representative from a conservative Zenturi house. "Such power cannot be left unguarded," Elias answered, his voice steady. "The Keystones will be housed in a new temple, open to all. Their purpose was never to grant power, but to preserve truth. That truth belongs to everyone now." The debate continued for hours, but the momentum of change was unstoppable. The psychic impact of the ritual had spread far beyond the inner sanctum, touching minds across the empire through bonds of family and commerce. The truth was out, and it could not be contained again. 5 years passed. Zeus had transformed. The stark division between upper and lower districts had softened, with ancient human Zenturi architectural motifs blending with modern Zenturi design. Humans and Zenturi moved freely among each other. The caste system evolved into a fluid framework of vocational specialization rather than rigid hierarchy. In the Grand Plaza, before a massive crowd of both species, Elias and Sunri stood hand in hand on a ceremonial platform. Behind them rose a monument of 7 pillars, each housing one of the keystones that had changed their world. Elias, now co-sovereign alongside Sunri, addressed the gathering. 5 years ago, a chance collision in a marketplace led to the restoration of a bond that had been broken for millennia. Today, we celebrate not just the union of 2 individuals, but of 2 peoples who should never have been divided. Sunri continued, her once haughty voice now warm and inclusive. The rite of first night was never about dominance or submission. It was about recognition, that we are stronger together than apart, that diversity breeds resilience. After the ceremony, they stood on the balcony of their shared quarters, looking out over the city as the twin moons rose above the horizon. Sunri's hand rested on her swollen abdomen, where their child, half human, half Zenturi, grew as living proof of their bond. "What do you think they'll be like?" Elias asked, placing his hand over hers. Sunri smiled. "Free," she replied simply. "Free from the burden of lies that weighted down both our peoples for so long." Elias pulled her closer, resting his chin on the top of her head. "When I first met you, you called me beneath your caste," he reminded her teasingly. She laughed softly. "And now you stand beside me as equal sovereign. The universe has a strange sense of humor." "Or perhaps," Elias suggested, "the echoes knew what they were doing all along." Below them, the lights of Zeus twinkled like earthbound stars, humans and Zenturi moving through the streets together, the rigid boundaries of the past dissolving with each passing day. The keystones glowed softly in their monumental housing, no longer needed to enforce the truth, but preserved as a reminder of how easily history could be forgotten, and how powerfully it could be reclaimed. In the darkness of space beyond the twin moons, countless stars beckoned, each one a potential home for the renewed communion of species. The rite of first night had given both humans and Zenturi a second chance, and this time they would write their history together,